Question number 4, Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. Does Budget 2014 show the full effect of revenue cuts and expenditure that the National Government expects over the next 4 years?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, yes, it reflects all the decisions the Government has made and also any risks that the Treasury sees both to expenditure and revenue over the next 4 years.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Honourable David Parker.
What did he mean when he said that his next budget, quotes, will be the most radical restructuring of government spending in 50 years, close quotes, as quoted in the Aurum column in the Sunday Star Times?
Well, Mr
Honourable
Speaker,
Bill English.
I don't think I actually said just what he wrote down, but it was in the context. It was in the context of a discussion about the greater use of data and analysis to understand at an individual level the needs, particularly of our most challenged families and children, so that we can act individually across departments to change the path that those people are on. Investing now to save money later.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Honourable David Parker.
So when will he show us the money?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, you can see in the surpluses the impact of a much more focused government spend on reducing welfare dependency, on reducing crime and the flow of people into the very expensive justice system. So the money is there in the surpluses.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Williams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Minister of Finance assure the public that no government payments arising under the Christchurch rebuild were deferred in order to achieve the surplus announced in the Budget 2014?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, yes.
Supplementary.
Order, I'm just waiting. Supplementary question, Honourable David Parker.
Why won't he commit to maintaining the real value of health and education spending, adjusted for inflation and population change, through to 2021?
Well, Mr
Honourable
Speaker,
Bill English.
There's a very good reason why we won't commit to that, because we don't just fund the services in order to have them. We put in more money to get better results. For instance, the government has put more money into health and it has achieved higher immunisation rates, shorter waiting times in emergency rooms, more elective surgery, faster access to cancer, even though the new money going in hasn't been as large as the Labor Party says it should. That's Labor's problem. They just shovel money in and they think that's an indication of success.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Richard Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, is the fact that police are having to choose between protecting vulnerable children or pursuing organised crime yet another hidden cost of the so-called budget surplus?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, if the member followed the activities of government, he'd know that we're doing both, actually. Pursuing organised crime in a vigorous manner, backed up by changes in policing activity and better use of intelligence, and we are also, and a 20% reduction in crime, and we're also spending more on doing a better job of supporting our most vulnerable children, where the issue is not so much money, it is actually about how government organises itself and whether it's serious about protecting vulnerable children or just maintaining its own agencies.
Supplementary question, Honourable David Parker.
By what date does his government plan to have paid down all of the debt it has borrowed since 2008?
More than World War II.
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, we've got a date and a track that's honest about the numbers. What the Labor Party says it can reduce debt by redefining it to make it look a lot smaller. We're not going to do that.
Supplementary question, Speaker.
Point of order, Honourable David Parker.
My answer
I
to...
invite the member to repeat.
Thank you. By what date will the government have repaid all of the debt it has borrowed since 2008?
Slightly different question, but Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, I can't give the member an exact date. But what I can tell him is that by the election, we won't have done dodgy accounting to make it look like we're paying down debt.
Order. Order. Could I ask? Order. Supplementary question, right, Honourable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Minister of Finance read pages 15 and 16 of the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee record last week, where Mr. Brownlee confirmed that in the last budget, the Christchurch repair costs are down approximately $500 million, and that the Prime Minister has talked about an extra $5 billion being required into the future, that being, of course, the same sum, the $500 million that is in the surplus. Why shouldn't someone conclude that the people of Christchurch
Order, just bring
are
the question
paying an
to
awful
conclusion.
cost for his so-called mythical surplus?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I can't confirm that simply because it's not correct. There's been no doubt about the government's commitment to the rebuild of Christchurch, and at the same time there are ongoing discussions with the Christchurch City Council to ensure that they can meet reasonable costs, but they do that in the context of strong government support. And of course we don't know yet what the final numbers will be, because there are still some years to go in the rebuild of Christchurch.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question. Point of order. Right, Honourable Winston.
Seeing as it's not available at this point in time to apparently the Minister of Finance, I leave to table the transcript.
The member has the opportunity to raise a point of order. I have failed to understand what the point of order was that the member's raising, but it's not a means of contesting the answer that's just been given.
Well, point of order.
Then I will listen to the member.
That's the last thing I did. What I did was seek to table the transcript.
Order. Order. Then if the member wants to table something, the procedure is he rises to his feet and he seeks leave to table. No, he didn't. He took a point of order and then there was a long lead in to a rather garbled message. Order! Now, if the member wants to table a transcript from a select committee, that is something that I assume is freely available. It's not available? Order. I will hear from Mr. Order. Member wishes to speak to the point of order?
Yes, I do.
I'll hear from Mr. Brownlee.
Mr. Speaker, I'm loath to make any comment because the member is attributing a certain comment to me, which I'm not disputing. However, these are transcripts from the appropriations, the estimates hearings, which are not yet reported to Parliament. They cannot be tabled.
Order. Order. On the basis that they're not yet reported to Parliament, I do not think it's appropriate to put that leave, and I won't.
Point of order.
I have a point of order. I hope it is a point of order. Let's hear it. Point of order.
Well, you may be able to tell me before I make it, sir. Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Honourable.
You made a ruling in respect of Mr. Peters, and when you ruled, you said that Mr. Peters, I think, put a preamble in front of his point of order. Mr. Brownlee did exactly the same thing by contesting a point that Mr. Peters made, and you said
order. The member will be accompanying other colleagues if he also continues to talk and I rise to my feet. There could be a rather long queue, that's indeed so. Order. I was informing the Right Honourable Winston Peters the correct process for tabling a document. The correct process is point of order and then simply say I seek leave to table a document. The member himself, Mr Cosgrove, has been here now for a few years. He should actually know that. Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, in this I'm going to plead guilty immediately to contesting a ruling, sir.
Order.
A public
Order. The member doesn't need to go any
is
further.
Not confidential.
Order. The member doesn't need to go any further. I warned the member that if he was going to raise spurious points of order, I would be asking him to leave the chamber. The member will now leave the chamber.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Order. We have another point of order, and there is a habit developing here, but I will hear it from Chris.
It is a new point of order, Mr. Speaker, and the issue that I want to ask you to give a further consideration on is where a select committee...
Order. Order.
Where a select committee meeting is held in public and a transcript is taken of it, that wouldn't otherwise be available to all members of the House. It seems quite reasonable that a member may seek leave to table that. And so it's not if it was a confidential part of a meeting, therefore, that would be subject to privilege of the committee. But if it is a public session of the committee, then in fact members who weren't present at the meeting would be disadvantaged to members who were. So I wonder if you could give some further consideration to that matter.
Order. I thank the member. I will give it further consideration, but if also affecting my decision will be the fact that all transcripts after the report back are subsequently available to all members. Question number...
Supplementary question.
Oh, I apologise. Supplementary question, Louisa Upston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Supplementary question to the Minister of Finance. How has the government used revenue reductions to make the tax system fairer for New Zealand households and families over the last 5 years?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, over successive budgets, the government has made a number of changes to repair the damage done to the tax system by the previous Labor government. In particular, we've removed the ability for people to shelter their income, raising the effective tax rate on property investment, increasing funding for IRD to target property speculators, preventing people using investment losses, including from rental properties, to make themselves eligible for working for families and other government support, and bringing in stricter rules to ensure multinational companies contribute their fair share of tax. Mr. Speaker, the result of all that is that people on the highest incomes now pay a slightly larger proportion of tax than they used to when rates were higher, but there were more loopholes.
Question number 5, Scott Simpson.